The stars had witnessed many strange things across millions of years, but nothing like this. On a cold morning that felt like any other, the galaxy discovered that humanity had vanished. Ambassador Kael'thas stood alone in the command center of Earth's largest orbital station. His 4 eyes scanned the empty corridors with growing unease. Coffee cups sat on desks, still warm to the touch. Computer screens glowed with unfinished reports. A child's toy lay abandoned in the residential sector, its lights still blinking in a cheerful pattern. But there were no humans, not one. He touched his communication device with a trembling hand. "This is Kael'thas to the Velterin command ship. Earth station is completely empty. No bodies, no signs of struggle, no explanation." The response came after a long pause. "Ambassador, we are receiving similar reports from all human colonies. Mars, Europa, Titan, the outer settlements, all empty. They are just gone." Kael'thas walked through the silent halls of the station. In the cafeteria, meals sat half-eaten on tables. In the medical bay, equipment hummed quietly, waiting for patients who would never come. In the observation deck, he found a handwritten note taped to the window. It said simply, "We're sorry we couldn't say goodbye." Across the galaxy, other species were making the same horrifying discovery. The Drelthari Empire sent scouts to the human mining colonies in the asteroid belt. Empty. The Morphean Collective checked the human research stations near the galactic core. Empty. The Quix Commonwealth investigated human trading posts along the rim worlds. All empty. 7 billion humans had lived across 24 worlds. Now there were none. Panic spread through the galactic community like wildfire. The Council of Ascended Races held an emergency meeting for the first time in 10,000 years. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered in the Great Chamber, their voices raised in confusion and fear. "Could this be a weapon?" asked the Drelthari War Master. "An invasion from another galaxy?" suggested the Morphean scientist. "A disease that left no trace?" wondered the Quix philosopher. But none of their theories made sense. Weapons left evidence. Invasions left signs of battle. Diseases left bodies. This was something else entirely. What disturbed the aliens most was how prepared humanity seemed to have been. Earth's defensive satellites continued their patrol patterns. Automated factories kept producing goods. Computer systems maintained themselves perfectly. It was as if humans had planned to be gone. Doyun watched all of this from a place between dimensions. He existed in a pocket of reality that normal beings could not perceive. He saw the alien ambassadors searching desperately for clues. He saw their fear turning to dread. He wanted to tell them the truth, but he could not. Not yet. His voice would not reach them from where he stood. He remembered the day it had all begun. 3 years ago, a young girl named Ji-won had asked a simple question during a school science fair. "Teacher, why do stars disappear?" Her teacher had laughed and explained that stars don't really disappear. They just die after billions of years. But Ji-won was not satisfied. She had been tracking stellar positions for her project, and she had noticed something strange. Stars were disappearing. Not dying. Disappearing. And not just a few. Hundreds of them, vanishing from sectors of space that should have been stable. Her discovery had reached the human government within days. Scientists had investigated and found something that terrified them. Something massive was moving through higher dimensions, consuming entire solar systems. Something that ate reality itself. Humanity had faced a choice. They could warn the galaxy and watch as thousands of species panicked, fought each other, and ultimately died anyway. Or they could act alone. They chose to act. In secret facilities hidden across human space, the greatest minds worked on the Severance Protocol. A device that could transport humanity's entire species into the higher dimension where the entity lived. It was insane. It was impossible. It was their only chance to save the galaxy. Hyejin had been one of those scientists. She had worked on the consciousness transfer system, the technology that would allow human minds to exist in a realm where normal matter could not survive. She had known the odds, less than 1% chance of survival. But 1% was better than 0. The night before the severance protocol activated, Hyejin had walked through the streets of Seoul one last time. She had eaten her favorite noodles. She had called her mother and told her she loved her, without explaining why. She had looked up at the stars and whispered, "We're coming for you, monster." Now Kelthos stood in the empty station, holding that handwritten note. Around him, automated systems continued their work, maintaining a civilization that no longer existed. He folded the note carefully and placed it in his uniform pocket. "Whatever you did," he said to the empty air, "wherever you went, I will find out why. I promise you that." In his dimensional pocket, Doyen heard those words. He closed his eyes and turned toward the battlefield that raged beyond normal space. Humanity was already fighting, already dying, and the real war had just begun. 3 weeks had passed since humanity vanished, and the galaxy was tearing itself apart trying to understand why. Kelthos led a team of investigators through an underground facility on Mars. The red dust covered everything, but inside the base, the lights still burned bright. "Ambassador, you need to see this," called out Vrenna, a Morphean technical expert. She stood before a massive door marked with human warning symbols. The door had been sealed with a lock that required both quantum keys and DNA verification. Someone had bypassed it from the inside before leaving. They entered the chamber beyond and stopped in their tracks. The room was enormous, stretching deep into the Martian rock. At its center stood a device unlike anything they had ever seen. It was a sphere 50 meters wide, covered in symbols that hurt to look at. Cables as thick as tree trunks connected it to generators that could power entire cities. "What is this?" Kelthos whispered. Vrenna approached a nearby console and activated it. Holographic displays filled the air, showing equations and diagrams. "I need time to translate the human data, but this appears to be some kind of quantum transport system, except it is operating on principles that should not be possible." Over the next few days, investigative teams found similar devices on Earth, Europa, and Titan. Each one was identical. Each one had been activated simultaneously, and each one had consumed enough energy to vaporize a small moon. The pieces of the puzzle began to come together when they found the data archives. Humanity had left behind carefully organized files, encrypted but not impossible to break. It was as if they wanted the galaxy to understand, eventually. Mirai's voice came first from the recordings. She had been a commander in humanity's secret military division, the one that had overseen the Severance Protocol project. In the hologram, she looked tired, but determined. "If you are watching this, then we are already gone," her image said. 3 years ago, we discovered something that changed everything. We found evidence of an entity that exists in higher dimensional space. We called it the Devourer. The hologram showed star charts. Red markers indicated where stars had disappeared. There were hundreds of them, forming a path through the galaxy like a scar across space. "The Devourer moves through dimensions that normal species cannot perceive," Mirai continued. "It feeds on the fundamental energy that holds reality together. Where it passes, stars simply cease to exist. Planets, civilizations, history itself all consumed." Kelthos felt his blood run cold. "How long until it reaches inhabited space?" Vrenna checked the calculations in the human files. Her face went pale. "According to their projections, it would have reached the core worlds in approximately 30 years. No defense would have worked. No evacuation would have been fast enough." The hologram changed to show another human, a young woman named Ji-won. She was older in this recording, perhaps 20 years old, but her eyes held the same curiosity they had when she was a child discovering the vanishing stars. "We considered telling the galaxy," Ji-won said softly. "We ran the simulations. In every scenario where we announced the Devourer's existence, the result was the same: panic, war, species fighting each other for resources to build impossible escape plans, billions dead from violence before the Devourer even arrived." "So we chose a different path," Mirai's voice returned. "We built the Severance Protocol, a device that could transport our entire species into the higher dimension where the Devourer exists. We knew we probably could not kill it, but we could fight it. We could slow it down. We could buy you time." The recording showed footage of humanity's final days. Cities filled with people saying goodbye to their homes. Parents explaining to confused children that they were going on a great adventure. Scientists working around the clock to perfect the transport technology. One recording showed a mother named Seo-yun tucking her daughter into bed. "Will we see our house again?" the child asked. Seo-yun smiled, though tears ran down her face. "Maybe. But even if we don't, we are doing something important. We are protecting everyone." Another recording showed an engineer named Eunji making final adjustments to the Severance Protocol. "The calculations are complete," she said to her team. "Probability of successful transport is 98%. Probability of survival after transport is 0.003%. Someone off camera asked, "Should we tell people the real odds?" Eunji shook her head. "No. Hope is a weapon too. Let them carry it into battle." Kalthos watched hours of recordings. He saw human philosophers like Taeyang giving final lectures on courage and sacrifice. He saw soldiers volunteering for the mission despite knowing the truth. He saw children being brave because the adults around them were brave first. "They knew they were going to die," Vrenna said quietly. "All of them knew, and they went anyway." The final recording was a message from humanity's elected leaders, broadcast to all human worlds on the day of the severance. "Citizens of Earth and her colonies, today we embark on the greatest journey our species has ever attempted. We go not as conquerors, but as guardians. We go not for glory, but for duty. We go so that other species, many of whom have never shown us kindness, might live in peace." The message ended with simple words. "We are humanity. We stand in the dark, so others may see the dawn." Kalthos turned off the hologram and stood in silence. Around him, the alien investigators were equally quiet. They had spent decades dismissing humanity as primitive and aggressive. They had mocked human culture and refused them seats in the higher councils. They had treated humans as children playing with dangerous toys, and humanity had responded by sacrificing everything to save them. "What do we do now?" asked Vrenna. Kalthos looked at the massive Severance Protocol device, still humming with residual energy. "We find a way to help them, and if we cannot help them, then we honor their sacrifice by being worthy of it." But even as he spoke, quantum sensors across the galaxy began detecting strange readings, echoes from the higher dimension, the sound of a war that no normal being could witness. Humanity was fighting, and they were dying. The dreams started 2 months after humanity vanished. Across the galaxy, billions of aliens woke in the night, sweating and confused. They had dreamed of memories that were not their own. Memories of being human. A Drelthari warrior dreamed of a human father teaching his son to ride a bicycle, catching him each time he fell. A Morphean merchant dreamed of a human woman's first kiss under cherry blossoms. A Quick scholar dreamed of a human child's wonder at seeing the ocean for the first time. At first, they dismissed these dreams as stress, but the dreams grew stronger, more vivid, more real. Kalthos experienced them too. He dreamed of walking through a place called Soul, feeling rain on skin he did not have, tasting food his biology could not process. In the dream, he was a human named Taeyong, a philosopher standing before students in a university. "What makes us human?" Dream Taeyang asked his class. "Is it our bodies? Our DNA? No. It is our choices. It is standing up when we could stay down. It is protecting the weak when we could ignore them. It is choosing the hard right over the easy wrong." Kael'thas woke with tears on his face. He had never cried before. The quantum communication arrays began picking up signals that should not exist. Whispers in human languages, fragments of conversations, echoes of voices from somewhere beyond normal space. Scientists could not explain it. The signals came from the higher dimension, bleeding through the barrier between realities. One night, every screen in the galaxy flickered and showed the same thing. A human woman appeared, her image broken and distorted. It was Yejin, the scientist who had worked on the consciousness transfer system. "This is a message in a bottle," her fragmented voice said. "We exist now as distributed consciousness across quantum networks. Our bodies are gone, but our minds persist in patterns of energy and information. We can see you sometimes through the gaps in reality." The image flickered. "We want you to know what we found here. The Devourer is not a creature. It is hunger itself, given form and purpose. It has consumed thousands of civilizations across millions of years. None of them fought back. They just disappeared into its endless appetite." "But we are fighting." Hyejin's image smiled, though it was a sad smile. "We are hurting it, and it does not understand why we do not surrender." The message ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. An archaeological team on Mars made a discovery that changed everything. They found a memory vault, a massive database that humanity had left behind. It contained billions of recordings, messages, and memories. The vault's interface had instructions in 300 languages. The humans had wanted it to be found. The team activated the vault, and holographic images filled the chamber. They saw humanity's final days in detail that broke their hearts. They watched a woman named Seoyun recording a message for the daughter who would be born after she was gone. "Sweet girl," Seoyun said, "I will never hold you. I will never see you smile. But I go into the dark so that you might live in the light. Grow strong, grow kind, and remember that your mother loved you enough to face the impossible." They watched soldiers like Jinwoo saying goodbye to families they would never see again. "I am scared," he admitted to his sister. "But someone has to stand between the monster and the innocent. Today, that someone is me." They watched children being told stories of heroes and adventures, not told that they were the heroes, that this was their final adventure. Parents lied with smiles on their faces, turning terror into courage through sheer force of will. One recording showed an artist named Suji completing her final painting. It showed a single human figure standing before a massive darkness, small but unbroken. She titled it, "Defiance." "Art is how we scream into the void that we existed," Suji said to the camera. "Let this painting scream for us when we are gone." The painting was found in an art gallery on Earth, perfectly preserved. The alien archaeological team brought it back to the Galactic Council chambers. It hung there now, a reminder of what had been lost. Another recording showed a teacher named Minho giving his final lesson to a classroom of children. "Today, I teach you the most important thing you will ever learn. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is being afraid and doing what is right anyway." A small boy raised his hand. "Teacher, are you afraid?" Minho smiled. "Yes, I am terrified, but I am going anyway, because you deserve a future. All children deserve a future, even ones not yet born, even ones who are not human." The vault contained messages from humans of every age, every profession, every world. Farmers and soldiers, artists and scientists, children and elders. Each one said essentially the same thing. We go so you may live. The galactic community began to change. Species that had fought each other for centuries declared peace in humanity's name. Worlds that had hoarded resources began sharing them. The Drelthari Empire, known for their warrior culture, declared a day of mourning for humanity. They lowered their battle flags and wept. The Council of Ascended Races, beings who had evolved beyond physical form, appeared before the galactic community for the first time in recorded history. They spoke in voices that resonated in the mind rather than the ear. We have existed for millions of years, they said. We have seen species rise and fall. We have witnessed empires that spanned galaxies. But never have we seen such absolute sacrifice from such young people. Humanity has taught us that evolution of the spirit matters more than evolution of the body. But the echoes from the higher dimension grew more desperate. Sensors detected massive energy spikes, the signature of weapons firing, of explosions that would dwarf supernovas. Humanity was not just fighting. They were dying in numbers too large to comprehend. Kylthos stood before Suji's painting in the council chambers. Other ambassadors joined him, all of them silent. They had ignored humanity, dismissed them, sometimes even mocked them. Now humanity was dying to save them. We owe them a debt we can never repay, Kylthos said. The least we can do is remember them. The least we can do is be worthy of their sacrifice. But even as he spoke, a new echo came through the quantum arrays. It was a scream, distorted and broken, the sound of billions of humans dying at once, and beneath it, something else, something vast and hungry, finally paying attention to the prey that dared to bite back. The devourer had noticed humanity, and it was not pleased. In a place that should not exist, where the laws of physics bent and broke, humanity fought a war they could not win. Jinwu existed now as something between matter and energy. His body had dissolved when the Severance Protocol transported him to the higher dimension, but his consciousness remained, given new form by the technology Hyejin and her team had created. He could see in ways that human eyes were never meant to see. And what he saw was terror. The devourer stretched across what might have been called distance in this impossible space. It was a wound in reality itself, a living absence that consumed everything it touched. Describing it in human terms was like describing an ocean to someone who had never seen water. It was vast. It was hungry. It was ancient beyond measure. Humanity had arrived in its domain 3 months ago, 7 billion minds in forms of pure energy and adapted matter. Within the first hour, 2 billion had died. The devourer had reached out with appendages that existed in too many dimensions to count and simply erased them from existence. But the remaining 5 billion had fought back. Jinwu led a battalion of soldiers who had once been farmers, teachers, and office workers. They wielded weapons that were more concept than metal, devices that fired concentrated packets of reality at the devourer's body. The weapons barely scratched it, but they scratched it nonetheless. "Hold the line!" Jinwu shouted, his voice carrying across quantum frequencies. "Every second we hold is another second they live." He meant the galaxy, the innocent civilizations who had no idea what lurked in the higher dimensions, the children playing on distant worlds, the families eating dinner together, the lovers watching stars that would have been devoured if humanity had not come here. The devourer struck again. A wave of unexistence rolled across the battlefield. Jinwu watched as the soldiers beside him simply stopped being. One moment they were there, fighting and defiant. The next moment, there was nothing. Not even memories remained. But more humans rushed forward to fill the gaps. They always did. Nari coordinated the defense from what passed for a command center in this twisted space. She had been a strategist in Earth's military, and she had brought those skills to Hell itself. Her calculations showed the truth in numbers too terrible to speak aloud. Humanity was losing 1% of its remaining population every day. "We have 4 months at this rate," she told her officers. "Maybe 5 if we are lucky. Then there will be none of us left." "Can we win?" asked a young lieutenant named Hyunwoo. Nari looked at the tactical displays, showing the Devourer's vast form and humanity's shrinking forces. "No, we can't." "But that was never the plan. The plan is to hurt it enough that it stops moving toward the galaxy. The plan is to make it pay such a price for every meter it advances that it gives up. And if it does not give up, then we make sure it is too wounded to continue after we are gone." Nari returned to her calculations, hiding the despair in her heart. Hyunwoo had volunteered for this mission when he was only 19 years old. He had known the truth, known that he was signing up to die in a place beyond death itself. His parents had begged him not to go. He had hugged them and said, "I would rather die standing than live on my knees." Now he led a strike team deep into the Devourer's body, planting weapons that would detonate in cascading reality failures. It was like trying to kill an ocean by poisoning individual drops of water, but individual drops could add up. The Devourer seemed to pulse with something that might have been amusement. It had consumed thousands of species across millions of years. None of them had fought back. They had simply screamed as they died. But these humans, these tiny fragments of matter and energy, they hurt it. Actually hurt it. The entity began to adapt. It learned from the weapons humanity used and developed defenses. It studied their tactics and countered them. It was ancient and intelligent, and it was very, very patient. But humanity had something the Devourer did not understand. They had spite. When the Devourer adapted to their reality disruption weapons, humans switched to quantum entanglement bombs. When it learned to defend against those, they used dimensional shear mines. When all their weapons failed, they threw themselves at it physically, allowing their consciousness forms to detonate like living grenades. Jinwoo watched a friend named Yuna charge into the Devourer's body. She carried enough energy to power a star, gathered painfully over days of preparation. She detonated herself in an explosion that briefly carved out a crater in the entity's impossible flesh. The crater healed in seconds, but it had been there. Humanity had made a mark. "For every one of us you take," Jinwoo screamed at the Devourer, "we take a piece of you. We will not die quietly. We will not make this easy." The entity responded by unleashing an attack that erased 300 million humans in an instant. It was the largest loss humanity had suffered since arriving. But even as they died, those humans triggered weapons they had been carrying. The Devourer's form rippled with pain. Mireille flew through the chaos, her consciousness form adapted for speed and navigation in this twisted space. She carried messages between the scattered human forces, maintaining communication across a battlefield that spanned dimensions. She saw the losses. She saw her species dying in waves, and she saw them fighting anyway. She found Jinwoo's battalion, or what remained of it. "New orders from command," she said. "We are pulling back to the secondary defense line. The Devourer is pushing too hard here." Jinwoo laughed. "A sound like breaking glass in this impossible place." "Pull back to where? There is nowhere to go, Commander. This is hell, and we are already here." "Then we make hell uncomfortable for our host," Mireille said. "Fall back fighting. Make it pay for every inch." The retreat was a nightmare. The Devourer sensed weakness and pressed its advantage. Humans died by millions as they pulled back, each one taking weapons to their death, each one making the entity pay a price. It was not victory. It was barely even survival. But it was defiance. 4 months into the battle, humanity's numbers had fallen from 7 billion to 2 billion. They held a defensive position that existed in no single point in space, a fortress built from weaponized mathematics and desperate hope. The Devourer surrounded them, patient and hungry. Nari broadcast a message to all remaining human forces. We have achieved our objective. The Devourer has stopped advancing toward the galaxy. It is focused entirely on us now. We have bought the galaxy time. Decades, maybe centuries before it recovers enough to move again. How long can we hold? Someone asked. Nari checked her calculations one final time. 6 months, maybe 8. Then we will be gone. Silence filled the communication channels. Then, from somewhere in the defensive lines, a single human voice began to sing. It was an old song from Earth, a song about standing strong in the face of impossible odds. Other voices joined in, then millions, then billions. 2 billion humans sang in the face of death itself. The Devourer paused in its attack, confused by this behavior. Its prey was doomed. They knew it. Why did they sing? Hyun-woo smiled as he sang, checking his weapons and preparing for the next assault. He finally understood what his parents had tried to tell him. Life was not about how long you lived. It was about what you stood for. And he stood for a galaxy of innocent beings who would never know his name. The singing faded. The Devourer attacked again, and humanity, broken and dying, rose to meet it with weapons drawn and defiance burning in their hearts. The galaxy mourned as it had never mourned before. On 1,000 worlds, monuments rose to honor humanity's sacrifice. But these were not simple statues or plaques. They were transformations of entire civilizations. On the Drelthari homeworld, the warrior clans gathered in their greatest arena. The War Master stood before millions of his people and spoke words that would have been unthinkable a year before. For 10,000 years we have measured honor by conquest and victory, but we were wrong. True honor is sacrifice without hope of reward. True honor is standing in the dark so others may live in the light. The humans have taught us this, and we will never forget. The Drelthari Empire declared that every child born from that day forward would learn humanity's story. Human names became names of honor in their culture. Warriors painted human symbols on their armor. The species that had once dismissed humans as weak now held them as the ultimate example of strength. The Morphean Collective went further. They were a species that valued logic and efficiency above all else. Emotion was considered a flaw to be minimized. But after studying humanity's final days, after understanding the choice they had made, something in the Morphean consciousness shifted. They began teaching their children about concepts they had long ignored: love, courage, selflessness. They studied human art and music, trying to understand the emotional depth that could drive an entire species to sacrifice itself for strangers. A Morphean philosopher wrote, "We have evolved our minds to perfect logic. The humans evolved their hearts to perfect compassion. We do not know which is the higher achievement." Kelthos led the effort to preserve humanity's memory. He traveled to Earth and walked through the empty cities: Seoul, New York, London, Mumbai, Lagos. Each city was a tomb, silent and waiting. He collected artifacts, books, photographs, children's toys, musical instruments. Each item told a story of the species that had owned it. In the human city of Tokyo, he found a small apartment that had belonged to a woman named Suji, the artist who had painted Defiance. Her studio was exactly as she had left it. Paintings covered the walls, each one showing moments of human life. A father and daughter sharing ice cream, friends laughing at a joke, an old couple holding hands on a park bench. Kelthos stood before the final painting, the one titled Defiance, and wept openly. He was not ashamed. Humanity had taught him that tears were not weakness. They were proof that you still cared. The galactic community began adopting human customs. The human concept of compassion toward strangers became a fundamental principle in interspecies relations. Species that had fought for centuries signed peace treaties in humanity's name. Resources were shared where before they had been hoarded. On the Quix Commonwealth worlds, they established schools of human philosophy. The words of Taiyang, the philosopher who had lectured about choice and courage, were carved into their halls of learning. Young Quix students memorized his speeches and debated their meanings. "What makes us human?" they would ask, repeating Taiyang's question. Then they would answer, "It is not our species. It is our choices. It is standing when we could kneel. It is protecting the innocent when we could walk away." But even as the galaxy honored humanity's memory, the quantum sensors continued to detect signs of the battle in the higher dimension. The readings were growing weaker. Humanity was losing. Minho's teaching videos became required viewing in schools across dozens of species. His final lesson, where he had told children that courage was doing what was right despite fear, changed how entire civilizations thought about education. Teachers across the galaxy began to focus less on facts and more on character. They asked themselves, what would Minho have taught? Seoyun's message to her unborn daughter became a symbol of parental love throughout the galaxy. Parents who faced hard choices would think of her, giving up everything so a child she would never meet might have a future. Memorial gardens were planted in her honor on 17 different worlds. The Council of Ascended Races made an unprecedented announcement. They declared that humanity, despite being nearly extinct, would be granted the highest seat on the Galactic Council. When humanity returned, if they returned, they would be welcomed as heroes and leaders. We who have evolved beyond physical form, we who thought ourselves superior to all others, have learned humility from the youngest species in the galaxy, the Council said. Humanity has shown us that advancement is not about transcending matter. It is about transcending selfishness. 6 months after humanity's disappearance, strange anomalies began appearing across the galaxy. Quantum sensors detected tears in the fabric of space-time. Brief glimpses of the higher dimension where humanity fought became visible to the naked eye. For seconds at a time, beings in normal space could see the war. They saw humanity's defensive lines glowing with energy and determination. They saw the Devourer, a horror beyond description, pressing against those lines like an ocean against a dam. They saw humans dying in waves, and they saw new humans rushing forward to fill the gaps. It was beautiful and terrible. It was heroism made visible, and it was clearly a losing battle. Kael'thas gathered the Galactic Council and presented research his team had been conducting. "We believe we can help them. The severance protocol technology that humanity used, we have reverse-engineered it. We can send a rescue force into the higher dimension." The council chamber erupted in debate. Some argued it was too dangerous. Others said it was impossible. Still others insisted that humanity had chosen to fight alone, and that choice should be respected. But Kael'thas silenced them all with a simple question. If you were dying in the dark, fighting to save people who had never shown you kindness, would you want those people to come for you? The chamber fell silent. Humanity did not ask for our help because they did not think they deserved it, Kael'thas continued. They had been treated as lesser beings for so long that they believed saving us was simply their duty. But I refuse to accept that. I refuse to let them die alone when we have the power to stand beside them. A Drelthari warrior stood. "I will go." A Morphean scientist rose. "I will go." A Quix philosopher joined them. "I will go." Across the chamber, representatives from dozens of species volunteered. They would go into hell itself to stand beside humanity, not because it was logical, not because it was safe, but because it was right. The rescue fleet began construction immediately. Millions of ships from hundreds of worlds, all equipped with adapted severance technology. They did not know if they could survive in the higher dimension. They did not know if they would arrive in time. But they had to try. As the fleet prepared to launch, quantum sensors detected a new signal from the higher dimension. It was faint, broken, and desperate, But it was unmistakably a human transmission. They were sending a message. The entire galaxy held its breath as the signal was decoded. When the translation came through, it contained just 4 words. "We need your help." The message arrived in fragments, scattered across quantum frequencies like broken glass. Alien scientists worked around the clock to piece it together, their hands shaking as they realized what they were hearing. It was a human voice, burning itself out across impossible distances to reach them. Yuna had sacrificed what remained of her consciousness to send the transmission. In the higher dimension, she had converted her entire being into a carrier wave, spreading herself across the barrier between realities. It was a death more complete than death, an erasure of self that left not even memories behind. But the message got through. "This is Yuna of Earth to anyone who can hear me. We are still fighting. 7 months have passed here. We have lost 5.5 billion. We number 1.5 billion now, and we are losing ground every day." Static filled the transmission. Then Yuna's voice returned, weaker now. "But we have learned something. The Devourer can be killed. Not wounded, not slowed, but destroyed completely. We found its core, the central point where all its dimensional forms connect. It is protected by layers of reality that shift and change, but it exists. It can be reached." The scientists listening to the message leaned closer, hardly daring to breathe. "We cannot do it alone. We are too few now, too weak. But if you can reach us, if you can fight beside us, we can end this. We can kill the thing that has hunted the galaxy for millions of years. We can make sure it never threatens another civilization." Yuna's voice was fading fast. "I am including coordinates and tactical data in this transmission, mathematical proofs that show how the Devourer can be destroyed from within its own dimension. But please, I beg you, send no one. This is not your war. We chose this. We end this. Just remember us." The transmission cut off. Yuna was gone, erased from existence by the effort of sending her message. But her data remained. Complex equations and battle plans that showed exactly how to kill something that should be unkillable. Kelthos stared at the decoded information with tears streaming down his face. "She just told us how to help them, and in the same breath she begged us not to come." A Morphean scientist named Kelvar studied the tactical data. "The mathematics are sound. With sufficient forces attacking the Devourer's core simultaneously from multiple dimensional angles, we could collapse its structure. It would die. But the casualties would be immense. Whoever goes into that dimension, most of them will not return." "Then it is exactly like what humanity is already doing," said a Drelthari warrior named Korthan. "They are dying so we might live. Now we have the chance to die so they might live. I see no reason to hesitate." The Galactic Council held an emergency session. The debate was brief. Every species voted to send their forces. This was no longer just humanity's war. It had become everyone's war the moment humans had chosen to fight it alone. The rescue fleet grew beyond all projections. What had been planned as a small force became an armada of unprecedented scale. 500,000 ships from 300 different species, all equipped with the severance technology that would transport them into the higher dimension. Junho led the human defensive lines in their darkest hour. He had been a commander in Earth's Navy, and he now coordinated what remained of humanity's forces with skill born of desperation. The defensive position was collapsing. The Devourer pressed from all sides, learning their tactics, adapting to their weapons. "Pull back to tertiary positions," he ordered. "Make them pay for every meter, but do not waste lives on positions we cannot hold." A lieutenant named Taejin reported from the eastern flank. "Sir, we have lost contact with the forward battalions, all of them. That is 40 million soldiers gone in the last hour." Junho closed his eyes briefly, adding 40 million more names to the impossible list of the dead he carried in his heart. Redirect reserves to plug the gap. We hold the line. We must hold the line. Sir, for how much longer? We are down to 1.2 billion. At this rate, we will be gone in 2 months. Then we hold for 2 months, Junho said simply. Every day we hold is another day the galaxy lives free. That is enough. But even as he spoke, he wondered if it truly was enough. They had come here to buy time, to slow the devourer, perhaps to stop it. They had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. The entity had stopped advancing toward the galaxy. It was focused entirely on destroying the humans who dared to resist it. But what would happen when humanity was finally extinct? Would the devourer simply resume its journey? Would all this sacrifice be for nothing in the end? Then Yuna's message reached them, transmitted through quantum relay stations humanity had established in the higher dimension. Junho listened to her voice, heard her tactical data, and understood. They did not have to just slow the devourer, they could kill it. Send this to all units, he ordered. Analysis teams are to begin studying the enemy's core location immediately. Combat teams are to shift tactics from pure defense to probing attacks. We are going to find that core and we are going to destroy it. Teijin stared at him. Sir, with our current numbers, we do not have enough forces to reach the core. The defenses around it are too strong. I know, Junho said, but we make preparations anyway. Perhaps help will come. He did not truly believe it. Why would the galaxy risk their people to save humans they had ignored for so long? But hope was a weapon too, and he would carry it until the end. In normal space, the rescue fleet prepared to launch. Kael'thas stood on the bridge of the flagship, surrounded by representatives from species that had never worked together before. A Drelthari warrior sharpened ceremonial blades. A Morphean scientist recited prayers to gods of logic. A Quix philosopher wrote final letters to family. Do you think they will accept our help? Asked Kelvar the Morphean. Kael'thas thought of Yuna's final words. Send no one. This is not your war. He thought of humanity's pride, their stubborn refusal to ask for help even when dying. They will accept it, he said finally, because they are practical, because they understand that killing the devourer is more important than their pride, and because deep down, I think they want to know that the galaxy they saved actually cared enough to try to save them back. The fleet engaged their severance drives. 500,000 ships began the transition into the higher dimension. Not all of them would survive the journey. The technology was new, untested on this scale, but they went anyway. As the ships vanished from normal space, a Quix child on a distant world looked up at the stars and asked her parent, "Will the humans come home?" The parent looked at the sky where the fleet had been and whispered, "I do not know, but for the first time, they will not face the dark alone." In the higher dimension, Junho's sensors detected an impossible reading. Massive energy signatures were forming, transitioning into their space from the normal dimension. Hundreds of thousands of them. Ships, not human ships. Ships from species across the galaxy. He stood frozen, unable to believe what he was seeing. Then he activated the communication channels and spoke words he never thought he would say. All human forces, this is Commander Junho. Reinforcements have arrived. The galaxy has come for us. Across the battlefield, 1.2 billion humans received that message. And for the first time in 7 months of hell, they allowed themselves to hope that they might actually survive this. The rescue fleet emerged into hell and immediately understood why humanity had told them not to come. The higher dimension was madness made manifest, a place where up and down lost meaning, where time flowed in directions that should not exist. Alien crews felt their minds stretching to accommodate perceptions they were never meant to have. Kael'thas gripped his command chair as his ship stabilized in the impossible space. Through the viewing screens, he saw the battlefield. It was vast beyond comprehension, stretching across dimensions his eyes could barely process, and at its center, the Devourer. The entity was worse than anything the warning messages had described. It was hunger personified, a wound in existence that consumed reality itself. Looking at it directly caused physical pain, but surrounding it, holding it back through sheer determination, were the remaining human forces. 1.2 billion lights against the infinite dark. "All ships, assume combat formation," Kael'thas commanded. "We fight beside humanity today, and we do not stop until that thing is dead, or we are." Junho watched the alien fleet arrange themselves with military precision. 500,000 ships, each one carrying warriors who had volunteered to die in a war that was not theirs. He activated communication channels and heard dozens of alien voices coordinating their attack. Then one voice came through clearly. It was Kael'thas. "Commander Junho of Earth, this is Ambassador Kael'thas of the Veltharan Concordat. We received your message. We are here to help." Junho's voice broke as he responded. "Ambassador, you should not have come. This is not your fight." "You are wrong," Kael'thas said. "You made it our fight when you chose to die for us. Now we choose to stand with you. Tell us how to kill this thing." The combined forces struck the Devourer with everything they had. Human weapons, refined through 7 months of desperate combat, combined with alien technology that had been developed over thousands of years. The entity reeled under the assault, its vast form rippling with pain and shock. It had expected the humans to die alone and forgotten. It had not expected the galaxy to come for them. And it definitely had not expected this level of coordinated fury. Nari coordinated the strategy from her command center, now integrated with alien tactical systems. The data Yuna had died to send them showed the path to the Devourer's core. But reaching it required breaking through defensive layers that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "We need strike teams to punch through on 3 vectors," she explained to the combined fleet commanders. "Simultaneous attacks at these exact coordinates. The dimensional barriers will align for precisely 43 seconds. That is our window." A Drelthari admiral named Korthon studied the plan. "The casualties will be severe. 90% of the strike teams will not survive." "I know," Nari said. "But if we succeed, we kill it. We end this forever." "Then we go," Korthon said simply. "Warriors of the Drelthari, prepare for glory." The strike teams formed up. Humans, Drelthari, Morphians, Quicks, and dozens of other species, all working together for the first time in history. They flew toward the Devourer's core in 3 massive waves, weapons charged and hearts steady. Jinwu led the human contingent of the first strike team. Beside him flew Korthen in a Drelthari battleship and a Morphian named Kelvar in a science vessel converted for war. They had practiced this coordination for hours, alien and human learning to fight as one. The Devourer sensed their intent and struck back with the full force of its power. The first wave of strike teams died almost instantly. 70,000 ships erased from existence in a heartbeat. But they had opened the path. The second wave pushed through the gap. Korthen's ship took a direct hit and began to disintegrate. He had seconds left. He used them to broadcast one final message. "Tell my people that I died well. Tell them I died as humanity taught us to die, standing tall." The second wave carved deeper into the Devourer's defenses, losing ships with every meter gained. But they reached the second barrier and broke through. The path to the core was opening. Jinwu saw it now, the heart of the entity that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years. It was a knot of concentrated hunger, a point where all the Devourer's dimensional forms connected. Destroy that, and the whole entity would collapse. Third wave, this is Strike Leader Jinwoo. The path is clear. Go now! The third wave, led by Kael'thas himself, pushed through the opening. They were met with defenses so intense that ships simply stopped existing the moment they entered the kill zone. But there were so many of them, and they were all willing to die. Kael'thas piloted his ship directly at the core, his shields failing, his hull melting under impossible energies. "For humanity," he screamed. "For the galaxy. For everyone who deserves to live without fear." His ship exploded in a blast of quantum fire, but not before releasing its payload. A weapon designed by combined human and alien science, built to exploit the exact weakness Yuna had identified. It struck the core, and the Devourer screamed. The sound existed in dimensions that normal beings could not perceive. But everyone felt it. A scream of agony and disbelief. It had hunted for millions of years, consuming thousands of civilizations, and now, impossibly, it was dying. Junho ordered all remaining forces to concentrate fire on the exposed core. "Everything we have! Now!" 1.2 billion humans and 200,000 remaining alien ships opened fire simultaneously. The combined assault was beyond anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Weapons of every type, powered by the desperation of species that had finally learned to work together, all focused on a single point. The Devourer's form began to collapse. Its dimensional structure unraveled like a thread being pulled from fabric. It thrashed and fought, trying to escape, but the combined forces held it in place with tractor beams and gravity wells and sheer stubborn refusal to let it flee. In the final moments, as the entity dissolved into nothingness, Doyon emerged from his dimensional pocket. He had watched the entire war from his hidden refuge, preserving human history and memory. Now he added his own energy to the final strike, burning out his consciousness to ensure the Devourer's complete destruction. The entity died. After millions of years of existence, after consuming thousands of civilizations, it simply ceased to be. The higher dimension rippled with the shockwave of its death, and for a moment reality itself seemed to sigh with relief. Silence fell across the battlefield. The surviving ships drifted in the strange currents of the higher dimension, their crews too exhausted and too shocked to celebrate. They had won. Against impossible odds, at terrible cost, they had actually won. Junho's voice broke the silence. "All forces, report status." The numbers came in slowly. Of the 500,000 ships that had entered the higher dimension, only 47,000 survived. Of humanity's 1.2 billion remaining population, only 127 million survived, but they had survived, and the Devourer was dead. The journey back to normal space was easier than the journey in. The dimensional barriers had stabilized with the Devourer's death. The fleet emerged near Earth, battered and broken but victorious. Kael'thas was not among the survivors. He had died in the final assault on the core, but before his death, he had transmitted one last message. "Tell humanity that the galaxy finally understands. Tell them we are sorry it took so long." The survivors, human and alien alike, gathered on Earth for the first time in 8 months. They walked through the empty cities that humanity had left behind, and they wept together. Warriors and scholars, soldiers and scientists, all united in grief and relief and exhaustion. Mireille stood in the streets of Seoul, the city where she had been born. Around her, the survivors were already beginning to talk about rebuilding. Alien volunteers offered to help restore human civilization. Some offered technology. Others offered to carry human children until humanity could rebuild its population naturally. "We will help you come back from this," a Morphean scientist told her. "You saved us. Now, we save you." 3 years later, human civilization had begun to grow again. The 127 million survivors had children. The galaxy's species donated genetic material to restore humanity's diversity. Monuments on 1,000 worlds told the story of what had happened, ensuring that no one would ever forget. A new generation of children grew up learning about the severance, about the terrible choice humanity had made, and about the galaxy that had finally come to stand beside them. The children of humanity played with the children of the Drelthari, the Morphians, the Quicks. They grew up in a galaxy that had learned that unity was stronger than division, that compassion was stronger than hate. On Mars, they built a monument to the dead, all the dead, human and alien, everyone who had fallen in the war against the Devourer. The monument bore a simple inscription, words that Taiyang had spoken in his final lecture. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is being afraid and doing what is right anyway. And beneath that, one more line. Humanity went into the dark so we could live in the light. Then the galaxy went into the dark so humanity could live at all. This is what it means to stand together. An alien child stood before the monument with her human friend. Why did they do it? The alien child asked. Why did they sacrifice everything? The human child, descended from the survivors, thought for a moment. Then she smiled and repeated words her grandmother Mireille had taught her. Because when you have the power to help others, you do. Not because it is easy, not because you will be rewarded, but because it is right. That is what makes us human, and that is what the galaxy learned from us. The two children held hands and looked up at the stars, where humanity's journey had begun and where it would continue. Together. Always together now. That was humanity's true gift to the galaxy. Not their sacrifice, but their proof that different species could stand as one when it mattered most. The judgment had reached the heavens, and the verdict was clear. Courage, compassion, and unity would always triumph over hunger, hatred, and fear.